Wow, we have not done a Synthetic Man reaction since, like, I think Tears of the Kingdom, actually. It's been that long. For those of you who don't know, like, Synthetic Man is some closeted homosexual, like, YouTube grifter. I would say he's, like, the stereotype as to, like, everything that's wrong with the anti-woke community right now. You know? like, he's one of, like, he's one of the biggest pieces of shit on the platform. The reason I don't talk about him more is that he doesn't really like talk about Nintendo much. I don't remember him covering anything Nintendo related last year. So this is the first time I've seen any of his videos since the Tears of the Kingdom one. This is like I'm expecting this to be like absolutely insane. Like even like okay, first of all, like two things. The title Donkey Kong Bonanza is proof that idiocracy is real. Like, again, Synthetic Man is so hyperbolic and so delusional that, like, things like that just instantly make you assume that, like, the person behind it is just a blithering, like, exaggerating retard. But, like, second of all, the thing that gave me a red flag about this is that Sean Malmstrom reposted this on his blog. So you just know absolutely 100% this is going to be a bad take, you know, just like Tears of the Kingdom, just like everything else that's been happening lately. Like, let's see what Synthetic Man has to say about a lot of people's Game of the Year for 2025.
Today we have a subject that I know for a fact most of you don't care about. We're going to discuss the infantilization of family-friendly video games. Or is my...
But, like, again, like, this is a really common thing with like Nintendo fans because they really do this thing where they're just like, oh man, like Mario and Zelda were so badass when I was a kid. It's nothing like it is now. Like they have this like weird like warped mindset that like those games were a lot more hardcore and intense than they really were. It's like, and it just isn't true. Like this stuff has always been geared towards kids. It's always been geared toward like all ages. You know, like this, the idea that like Nintendo is infantilizing their properties is just laughable, especially considering like how intense like Bonanza actually is. If anything, I would say like Bonanza is one of those games that's appealing to like older audiences because of just how like of just how challenging it can be and how like it harkens back to like the series roots, which of course, you know, 40, 30-year-old games. So the idea that this game is geared towards children is completely and totally wrong. And I do think we have to emphasize that a lot, you know, when we're talking about this. But
livestream chat likes to call them baby games. At first, this was going to be a Donkey Kong Bonanza review, but, well, as I played it, I realized the game is so incredibly bland that there's no way I could make a vaguely interesting video.
Nope. Bland. You can't call the game bland. Like, and this is coming from someone who, like, gave the game, like, you know, an 8 out of 10. You know, I'm not, like, over the moon about it by a lot of people, but, like, calling the game bland is just laughably stupid. Because you have, like, so many cool mechanics. It's so much fun to play. Great action. Great character designs. Great cutscenes. You know, a great plot twist. You know, like, there's so much to like about Bonanza. You cannot tell me that you did not enjoy this game at all. You know, that's kind of like my impression about this. You know, whenever I see someone like complaining about this, it's like, it's bland. Like, okay, how? Like, what were you expecting? Like, you know, like it just comes off as if these people are coping and seething about the this month's major Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive. Like that's kind of my mindset whenever I see like these guys like start running their mouths like, oh, it's so bland. Like I just instantly assume that they're out of touch and that they don't know what they're talking about and that they haven't spent enough time with the game because I'm like what like 25 hours in now. You know, I've 100%ed like Hilltop Layer and the Lagoon Layer. You know, I'm on my way to like doing post game stuff. So like, you know, I know people who have put like 40, 60 hours into this already and like, you know, they're completely over the moon about it. You know, I'm not nearly as enthusiastic about it as them because I do think the game like to a certain extent is not as good as like Donkey Kong 64 or the original Country games, but like I really don't think it needed to be because it's so radically different from what we've gotten before. Like the mere change of direction is really refreshing, and I think that's like my big problem with this narrative that Bonanza is bland. Because like, what are you comparing it to? You know, like there's nothing really like this. You know, it's a completely unique like video game title. It just there's nothing else like this.
About it, and it doesn't really seem like many people actually care about the game because they're still pretty pissed.
Oh man, I keep seeing people like try and say that like no, Mario Kart World has fallen off, Bonanza has fallen off. Nobody's talking about these games. Like again, this argument was old and tired when like Tears of the Kingdom came out. You know, nobody is talking about it. You know, that was like the go-to cope to downplay like Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Tears of the Kingdom in 2023. Like two of the best games I've ever played in my life, right? That was the big major cope then. And guess what, genius? You know, we're still talking about Tears of the Kingdom. We're still talking about Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Like, these streamers are like so out of touch with what people are actually talking about it. Like, their idea of like people talking about a game is like people engaging with them on their streams about it, you know? So like, this is why you have the meme game phenomenon where you have like FNAF or whatever that does really, really well on streams, but isn't necessarily popular in the real world, right? And then you have the opposite of extreme, Nintendo games, which aren't popular on streams at all, and yet like completely clear everything else when it comes to like long-term relevancy, popularity, and fun, you know? Like, streamers are not some arbiter of like what's being talked about. They are the new game journos. And I really do have to emphasize this a lot. Like, I do think streamers are worse than traditional game journalists because they make objectively incorrect statements like this.
And Nintendo for single-handedly driving up the price of video games to $80.
We already knew Grand Theft Auto was raising their prices. You know, other companies were going to raise their prices. We've known about this for a long time. Like, blaming Nintendo for this is wrong. It's just plain wrong.
And of course, the Switch 2 itself being overpriced, and
Wrong.
Donkey Kong Bonanza honestly just didn't even really look that interesting outside of the punching through walls gimmick, which many other games have done by now.
Like what? Like, name one 3D platformer where like you destroy the environment like in Donkey Kong Bonanza. Like, explain, like, tell me what they are. Like, what have you been playing? And if you say Astrobot, I'll laugh at you. Okay, you're completely insane. Like, what have you been playing that's like this? That has its like utility, that has its movement, that has all the things you can do, like all the things you can interact with. Like, name a single game like Donkey Kong Bonanza.
Arguably better than this game. And as you've probably noticed if you've watched my channel over the years, when I review mid games, those are usually the least interesting videos. So instead, let's just talk about the death of baby games in general. I don't know if this is yet another sign of the impending idiocracy, or arguably we're already there, but I'm sure all of you have noticed how hand-holdy video games have become over time, whether it's the
Bonanza is not in any way hand-holdy. You're given an entire area to explore. You find bananas at your own pace. You know, you move on to the next objective, right? Like, it's it tells you where to go, but like calling it handholdy is like laughably wrong. That's just the reality of it.
This newest yellow paint phenomenon, or the fact that every single game has to have an at least hour-long tutorial before it lets you play the game.
Oh yeah. Bonanza totally had an hour-long tutorial. No, it didn't. Like, he's making an argument about something that does not apply to Donkey Kong Bonanza, or Nintendo at all for that matter. Like, at all. Like, it's just...
But honestly, I feel like DK Bonanza is a new level of stupid that really feels condescending. Now, you could argue a lot of its problems are the same exact problems that Super Mario Odyssey had, and as you might know...
Yeah, I said the same thing, but like, you know, calling Odyssey bad is like objectively wrong. You can argue that like other Mario games are better, you know, like I have, but calling it bad is just objectively wrong.
I despise Super Mario Odyssey. I think it is the worst 3D Mario game by a significant margin. I know...
Worse than Sunshine? Okay, you pleb.
A lot of people like to hate on Super Mario Sunshine for being unpolished, but at least it's a challenging game and has fun, unique mechanics. The only interesting thing about Odyssey was Cappy, and taking over enemies was just so bland and one note.
Nope.
It wasn't really used in any truly interesting way. It was purely surface level. And the reason I bring this up is because if you imagine the Cappy mechanic and then just applied it to all of DK Bonanza, you essentially have the game, because punching through walls at
How exactly is Cappy equated to like DK Bonanza, all of DK Bonanza? So every one of like everything you do in DK Bonanza basically amounts to Cappy. You know, that's what he's saying here, is that like DK Bonanza is Cappy, and that doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about?
first is pretty fun. Destroying the environment in video games is always pretty cool. Red Faction Guerrilla is a great underrated game I reviewed. I think Deep Rock Galactic is a super fun co-op game where the destruction really adds to the shooting experience. Tear Down was a pretty fun indie game where you had to be creative about how you destroy the environment to pull off a heist.
I am so sick of these people like propping up random indie games that like no one's ever heard of or played. Like nobody cares. Okay, like name a game from a major developer with a high production value that's on par with Bananza. You can't. Like they specifically count on you like not playing this random shit to like make you think they know more about games than they actually do, and that like better games are out there. Like the reality is like none of this stuff is close
as fast as possible. But DK Bonanza just doesn't feel like it does anything with the mechanic. Instead, this feels like a game for, well, babies and only babies. If things like Spyro, Crash Bandicoot,
wrong. Like, what are you talking about? It feels like a game for babies. Like, okay, then why are so many adults over the moon about it? Why are so many people like enthusiastic? To me, it seems like you're letting your weird like obsession with what's mature dictate your tastes. You know, like this is the mature games for mature gamer phenomenon in practice, where like you downplay these far superior Nintendo games to prop up like, you know, more mature games that aren't nearly as good just because they're like more adult. You know, it's kind of the equivalent of like, to give you a literary example, you know, thinking Game of Thrones has to be better than Lord of the Rings, right? Because like, Game of Thrones tackles more realistic subjects. It's darker. People actually die in it. It's so mature. But like the reality is like A Song of Ice and Fire is sloppy. George R. R. Martin is a lazy fat bastard. You know, Tolkien established an entire genre. You know, all these fantasy conventions. You know, Lord of the Rings is an enduring cultural classic, while A Song of Ice and Fire will be immediately forgotten once George dies and people stop watching his overrated TV show. Like the reality is there's more to like entertainment, to fiction, to like games than simply being mature. And I do think this is like the most important thing about like this argument is like, because this is the default like anti-Nintendo argument you see all the time, is this idea that like Nintendo lost their way and they started making games for children, and like they don't really understand that they got into this stuff when they were kids, and they don't have like the perspective to understand that like they've always been doing this.
Super Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, those are all considered baby games by my edgelord audience. This would be a fetus game. This is truly one of the most brain-dead games.
So he's taking the next level. Like, oh, baby games isn't doing it anymore, so we gotta take it to its next logical step. Like, we gotta start talking about the fetus games. Okay, so like, are you gonna like start talking about like, I don't know, semen in balls games? Are you gonna talk about like talking about like I don't even know, like, you know, egg games? Like it's like what where is it gonna go next? Like, how is a fetus going to play Donkey Kong Bonanza? Like, the argument doesn't even make any sense. Like, again, like this is just like this is a really good example of just like how hyperbolic and ridiculous Nintendo anti-Nintendo arguments actually are. Because, like, they know that, like, the baby game argument isn't going to cut it anymore because everyone's been hearing this for decades now. And it's been, like, a de facto, like, anti-Nintendo thing, like, the big cope regarding the company. So, like, oh, we gotta imply that these games are being made for an even more immature audience. And it just isn't true at all.
Games I've ever played, to the point where I was losing brain cells in real time, which led to some, well, kind of hilarious retard moments from me. Because this entire game is just punching through stuff. And it has that same problem Super Mario Odyssey has, where the main collectible of the game feels utterly meaningless. You get one of these bananas.
Bananas get you skill points. Calling them meaningless is, like, completely and utterly wrong.
Every 5 fucking minutes. It's actually unreal. In many cases, it's less than 5 minutes. It's often just 1 minute between each major collectible. Now, of course, the difference in this game compared to Odyssey is that every 5 bananas you collect, you get a skill point. Yes, there's a fucking skill tree in DK Bonanza. Nintendo has truly fallen. This has got to be one of the most creatively bankrupt games that they've ever made. But that aside, the skill tree is mostly pointless. Very few of these upgrades feel meaningful on any level except getting more health or slightly upgrading one of your transformations abilities. A lot of the main skill tree's abilities are made completely obsolete by the transformations, and the big Kong and the elephant were really the only ones that enhanced that core destroy the world experience. The zebra just kind of runs fast, and not even like Sonic fast. It's only like 50% faster than DK, it feels like. And the ostrich flies, which completely breaks the already non-existent platforming experience. Yes, I know I said...
Okay, like, DK Bonanza isn't really a platformer, though. It's more of an action game. Like, it has platforming elements, but, like, oh, it breaks the platforming. Like, this isn't really a platformer. Like, this is the same argument, like, well, Zelda's not a very good RPG. Yeah, because it's not an RPG. Like, this is the giant cope that, like, people have to, like, resort to downplay Nintendo games. Like, well, like, I thought this was a platformer. Well, it's not. So, like, you're judging a game by a metric that it was never trying to adhere to.
I wouldn't review this game, but I just had to get a little bit of my rage out right there. Really, the true problem here is that this game is just incredibly bland and repetitive because it has no challenge at all.
Wrong.
Now, I know some of you who don't really play...
Okay, so how many times do you think he died during the streams? You know, how many times do you think he struggled during challenge rooms? How many times do you think he struggled against, like, K-Rool? Did he even beat the game? Is kind of my mindset. Like, the game, I would not call the game easy, for sure. I was, like, seriously wondering, like, doing the final boss, like, are kids going to be able to do this? Like, it just seems a little bit too complicated for them, but...
Play this genre will say, what are you talking about? All these games are brain dead easy. That is not true at all. Super Mario Sunshine is notoriously difficult at certain points. Yes, that's...
Oh, yeah, Sunshine. Yeah, the hardest 3D Mario game ever. Yeah, compare it to Sunshine, a game that's, like, notoriously obnoxious to complete. Yeah, sure.
Arguably because of jank reasons, like the pachinko machine. But basically, every level that took away FLUDD challenged your basic platforming fun.
Yeah, oh, those FLUDD levels, yeah, those were amazing. Like, too bad there's only a handful of them in the entire game. So he is comparing the absolute peak of Mario Sunshine, you know, the only thing that I think, like, really holds up about the game, something that I wish there was more of, you know, I love those levels in Sunshine, but he is comparing that to the entire experience of Bananza. You know, Bananza, like, wipes its ass with Mario Sunshine. You know, I've been very critical of Bananza. It's way better than Sunshine, for sure.
Fundamentals. Now, I will say, Sunshine's controls are not the best. They're definitely not as smooth as some of the other 3D Marios. But for me, at least, it was a pretty refreshing change of pace. It was some much-needed gameplay variety.
Is this his actual gameplay footage? He sucks. Like... Hey, I've done this so many times with you can kind of tell he's not playing the game well. Okay.
But I'm not here to sell you on Super Mario Sunshine. A lot of people have decided they just don't like the game that much for various reasons, and I think that's fine. And you can definitely make the argument Donkey Kong is not a Mario game, even if it's made by the Mario Odyssey team, but to me, it feels like it was clearly meant to be Super Mario Odyssey 2 in some ways. My problem is people are not really looking at this realistically. I don't think so-called baby games are even made for children anymore. They feel like they're made made for, well, man children. Which you could certainly consider me one of those, because I still love this genre to this day.
Okay, so I've heard this argument before that kids don't play Nintendo, that they don't care about the games or the characters or the consoles, and that's very observably not true if you actually spend time around kids. You know, I've seen kids recently like get excited over like Princess Peach Showtime. Okay, like it's a pretty common thing. Okay. Like this mindset that like the online gaming sphere is, all of whom are like childish adult males in their 20, 30, 40s. Like these guys, they don't know what kids are playing, and they don't have the perspective of what it's like being a kid, where like your parents don't necessarily pick up like the big new game right away. So like they have this weird misconception where they think this stuff isn't popular with kids, when like I can assure you that isn't true.
Thing is, there's clearly been a change in philosophy at some point at Nintendo. Again, the conspiracy theorist in me says this is to prepare for the global IQ decreasing. So every fucking game has to show you how to put the square peg in the square hole. Repeat it.
What are you talking about? When does Bonanza have like any kind of elaborate tutorials like at all? Like it gives you the basics and then you run wild and figure it out on your own. Like the game is not tutorial centric. I don't understand this mindset he has where he's like insisting that the game like holds your hand throughout the entire experience. Like I can assure you that's not true.
At that. And to bring up a few other obvious examples of this happening in other Nintendo games, we of course have the last several Pokemon generations, starting with
Yep, all of them have been great. Yep.
X and Y. Mega Evolutions were basically a free win button from the moment that you obtained your first one in the campaign. You're
No, they weren't though. Like you can tell whenever people like run their mouth about Pokemon if they don't play competitively. Like so many of them will like try and tell you that like, oh, I beat the Elite Four, the champion. I'm so good at the game, and like, bro, you don't know shit. You know, like until you like start like playing competitively and like understanding how much work it takes to optimize your team and like, you know, how much strategy goes into it. Like you really haven't done all that much in Pokemon. You fundamentally don't understand the IP in my experience. So like, yeah, he's running his mouth. Like, yeah, I guarantee you, like, oh man, Mega Evolution is an instant win button. Like, are you forgetting your opponents can Mega Evolve too? Like, no, this isn't true.
Basically unstoppable. You could one-shot everything. Sun and Moon had what felt like hours of cutscenes. They were hand-holding you throughout that fucking game for like no reason at all. Compare this to Red and Blue, where you could actually do certain gyms out of order, and while it wasn't exactly an open sandbox, you still had to figure out where you were supposed to go and what you were supposed to do. Did any children complain about that growing up? And of course, Scarlet and Violet, ignoring the fact that it's kind of a buggy, unoptimized piece of shit that looks
wrong. Even on release, that wasn't true. I don't understand why YouTubers keep like pushing this line that like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet were bad games. That's clearly not true, and I really hope like with the Switch 2 and ZA and stuff like that, like the audience starts pushing back against this nonsense, because I am sick to death of hearing this.
Worse than a PS2 game was also insultingly easy. Another good example, and a long-anticipated sequel for me anyway, that I was disappointed with a couple years ago, was Pikmin 4. The dog was the worst idea they ever had. It completely...
Ochi is awesome! Like, screw you! Like, I love Ochi!
Removed the micromanagement aspect of the game of having to actually control your small army and make sure they don't get fucking instantly squished or drowned or choke on poison gas.
Yeah, they streamlined the experience because Pikmin was too complicated for general audiences. Like again, like I kind of agree with this take actually. Like I wasn't completely happy with Pikmin 4 either. But like I understand why they did it, and by doing it that way, they kind of made Pikmin 4 more accessible to like younger players and people who hadn't played the first 3 games. They needed to do it because like the games had a long history of just not catching on with players outside of like the hardcore older audience.
Set on fire, etc., etc. No, everyone just jumps on the dog, and then the dog charges into the big monster, and then they all jump and bash the fucking thing at once, and you kill everything in a matter of seconds. I was so looking forward to the return of dungeons, because Pikmin 2 is my favorite Pikmin.
Oh,
I know
shit,
a lot of people like 1, I just feel like there isn't enough to it. 2 really fleshed out the core gameplay, the addition of treasures, the removal of the time limit. It made it so that the game could be made more challenging because since you had no time limit, you had unlimited time to make more Pikmin, so the dungeons could afford to just kill 50 dudes in 1 second if you fuck up. Pikmin 4 is not a bad game by any stretch. It had a lot of content, and the true challenge came from the time management mini games where you tried to figure out the most efficient way to grab all the treasures in a certain amount of time, but I honestly didn't care for any of that stuff. I liked the dungeon crawling. I honestly kind of regret not reviewing the game, but it was just one of those experiences where it sucks the life out of you, and at the end of it, you kind of just feel nothing, and it's hard to make a video when you're mostly apathetic toward the game, and all things considered, it was fine by today's standards, just not impressive at all. Which again, Pikmin 2 is one of my favorite games of all time, so definitely a huge downgrade. What is even the point of playing these games anymore? What makes them fun? I know I've been the type of guy who says that hard doesn't equal good, but if there's no challenge at all, like not even the slightest bit, then the game's boring.
So, like, if he wants challenge, like, why is he not talking about Bayonetta 3? Why is he not talking about, like, you know, Shin Megami Tensei or, like, stuff that exists on Nintendo platforms that's geared towards an older audience? You know, like, what's with these complaints? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me at all.
And giving out free cheat codes because some people just can't fucking get good is an embarrassment. It's not like games are even a fraction as hard as they were in the NES days. On my incredibly lazy podcast I do with my brother, we've been slowly making our way through all of the supposed greatest games of all time. And yeah, obviously some of those NES games are hard as hell. But the games I grew up with managed to find a happy medium. Yes, you could argue Spyro is a little bit too easy for most people.
So he's gonna try and shill Spyro. Like, oh man, that was totally better than Bonanza. I can assure you, it's not. You know, I've played Spyro recently. It's not.
People, that's fine, but you're not
mature games for mature gamers like Spyro.
Not gonna find anyone who makes that claim about Crash Bandicoot 1. And yet there's plenty of kids who beat Crash Bandicoot back in the day, and none of them bitch about it years later, except, you know, maybe to point out a few super hard levels, like those bridges, for example, always felt a little unfair.
Crash is trash. It was never good. Bad example. You suck.
I just find it incredibly insulting that people just say, oh, well, these games are made for kids, of course they're super easy. There's kids who can beat your ass in Call of Duty or Fortnite right now. Why are we pretending that children are all awful at video games? And again, we had no problem beating a lot of these games as kids as well. Nobody was asking for them to be so brain dead easy. That's
so like he's acknowledging that like Spyro is like an easier game. Like, why can he not make the association that like Bonanza is easier? And that there's nothing wrong with that. You know, that's kind of like the problem with this, is that he really does seem to think that like he's making this assertion that like all games back then were hard as nails, and like the reality is quite different. Like, that's not really true at all. Like the original Donkey Kong Country, that game is pretty straightforward, especially compared to 2, you know? Like, I would say DKC 1, this might be my bias showing because I've played through it so many times, but like, I would say DKC 1 is quite a bit easier than Bonanza, actually. But
why my mind goes to these conspiracy theories. Whether or not they're true doesn't matter, but whatever the excuse is, it's bullshit. They're just making the games worse in the search of the broadest audience possible. This is Nintendo we're talking about. Their games already appeal to basically everybody. So what do they stand to gain from this? Nothing. They only stand to lose. And to touch on another topic that I'm sure many of you were expecting me to cover in detail in this video, yes, part of infantilization is removing all edge from older cartoon-style characters. I don't have to name 1,000 examples here, but I think pretty much everyone...
Yeah, 64, wow. Donkey Kong 64 was such an edgy game. Oh man, it was so mature. You know, like it was indistinguishable from Bad Fur Day. Yeah, 64. What a great experience. Like, let's be real here. Like, I think Bonanza is a bit more hardcore than 64 in this regard, because it has way more intense violence, and like It feels like way more impactful in a lot of ways when it comes to like cutscenes and stuff like that. Like saying Bonanza doesn't have edge because they redesigned Donkey Kong is just ludicrously stupid.
Has noticed that the subtle differences between the 90s rare DK versus the modern Seth Rogen harmless big buffoon DK, and I don't think anybody likes this change. It's obvious that there is a concern.
Plenty of people do. You're delusional. Like DK, like this redesign was well received with the Mario movie. It's well received here. It was well received in World. You know, like this idea that like, well, people aren't happy with Bonanza. Like I can tell you, like I'm someone who prefers the older design actually. But like I can tell you that this redesign is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And if you have an issue with it, it's just a matter of preference. Okay. Like, I do prefer the Rareware look, but that's an iconic video game character for me. I understood what they were trying to do here, and I think they positively nailed it.
Effort to remove any and all rough edges from the old Attitude era of cartoon mascots. I mean, if you take a game like Gex 3, which is clearly supposed to be for all ages, the entire plot of that game is Gex trying to rescue a kidnapped Playboy bunny model, and after every single level, there's a cutscene where he basically says he wants to fuck her. I'm not even joking, dude.
My big, strong Gexy has done it again. Love those bulging biceps.
These biceps are just the beginning, my fair maiden. Speaking of bulging... Did I just say that out loud?
Yep, I'm afraid you did.
Penis.
I'm a bad boy.
That's probably the most extreme example, but, you know, you could name
that's why I didn't buy the Gex collection.
Bunch of other characters like Sonic or Crash Bandicoot. If we move into the 2000s, I think Jack from Jak and Daxter is a really good example, starting with the second game. And a character like Vex.
Jack, he's going to complain about Donkey Kong's redesign. Like, Jack had like a really terrible redesign going into 2. It's so awful, and like people like this never like acknowledging it, But yeah, he's really going to use Sonic and Crash Bandicoot as an example of like edgy video game characters. That's just wrong. Like those franchises are dead. They're
absolutely
irrelevant.
Could not even be made today because of how ridiculous it is that it was basically just edgy Super Mario 64. And speaking of Mario, I would even argue Mario had at least the tiniest bit of seriousness to his character in the past, and now he's just full-blown soy boy. I mean, he literally...
When was Mario taken seriously? What are you talking about?
He says wowie zowie. But this video is mainly about gameplay, not aesthetics. That's probably worth its own video. But yes, obviously I noticed it. No, I'm not a fan. Moving on. Alright, let's get back to DK Bonanza for a little while. As I've touched on, the collectibles feel basically meaningless, and there's a hell of a lot of them, which is going to remind some of you of Donkey Kong 64, arguably the worst 3D platformer that Rare ever made back in the...
Wrong. It's better than Banjo-Tooie. It's better than Conker's Bad Fur Day. Better than like let's see. Did they make any other collectathons? Yeah, I would say like I would say it's better than Banjo-Kazooie actually because it has a lot more variety and like way more content. Yeah, so I would say it's the best 3D collectathon they've ever made. Like so like yeah, Donkey Kong 64 is an absolute classic, and people like this are clowns for trying to push this like fabricated game journal narrative from the 90s that this game was like awful when in reality it just isn't true at all. This game
day, and I would say probably the worst collectathon to 100% I've ever personally done in my life. Now, as I said before,
he says this in a game where he tries to glaze Super Mario Sunshine, which is not as good as DK64, by the way.
The collectibles in this game don't feel nearly as necessary to actually pick up, because bananas are basically completely optional if you're good enough. Not that this game is that challenging to begin with, so you can just gun your way to the next story objective, and the game gives you free bananas as you go anyway. The banana coins are just used to purchase more bananas, and the fossils are used to purchase clothes.
Yeah, I feel like he didn't beat the game if he's saying stuff like this, because, like, I had to, like, take a lot of time going back and, like, getting more bananas to, like, expand my skill set so I could, like, beat the final boss.
Clothing which give you buffs. And that's as much detail as I'm going to go into that. When you're not just mindlessly punching through terrain, there is a small amount of platforming in this game. And given that this is a 3D platformer, you would expect the platforming to be a major focus of the level design, and it probably is for about half of the layers, we'll say. But ironically, the parts of this game that feature the most real platforming are often the worst parts of the game because of the transformations. The ostrich and later the snake completely trivialize any challenge that there could have been from platforming. The snake lets you high jump and slow down time, and the ostrich just lets you glide over massive gaps. And this takes no skill at all. And
Wow. So, utilizing in-game mechanics to bypass challenges. Wow, how terrible.
if you're thinking like, well, the transformation is limited, actually, no, not really. The way you fuel the transformations is by collecting gold, and I'd say about
You can't spam transformations. That's the point.
95% of the time, you're going to collect enough gold during the transformation to immediately transform again afterward. And even if you don't, there's an item in the game that lets you transform without having the gold meter full. This is a true fetus game, trust me. And I could excuse some of this if there was any challenge in the game, but there isn't, man. Even when it comes to easy games, there are levels of easy. You have to understand, there has to be at least the illusion of challenge for a game to be engaging. You can argue the Spyro games are very easy. You're probably only going to die maybe a handful of times, but there's still the illusion of death because of all the gaps you have to glide over. In DK Bonanza, there's a balloon
Let's be real here. You know, I love the Spyro games. Bonanza's way harder than any of them. Like, full stop, not even close. This guy is coping. He's an idiot.
Mechanic that saves you from dying, from falling off cliffs.
Wait, what?
And you can hold a balloon mechanic that saves you have to glide over. In DK Bonanza, there's a balloon mechanic that saves you from dying, from falling off cliffs.
Balloons are limited use items. I didn't buy any of them throughout my entire playthrough. Sounds like a you problem.
And you can hold up to 10 of them. Another huge problem I have with the hand-holding is the lack of any true exploration. There's not really any sense of discovery because this game...
Oh, okay, yeah. So he didn't play the post-game. Yeah, okay. So, when you go to the post-game and you're, like, exploring all the layers, you really do, like, begin to appreciate just how much stuff is actually in them. Because it's really easy, like, in your first time to the layers to just go on straight for the checkpoint and not find everything that's there. There's a lot of things you can find in each layer that you wouldn't notice the first time through. And you really begin to appreciate the level design, and the depth, and the complexity. Like, I came away from this thinking the levels were way better than the ones in Mario Odyssey, actually, because they have so much more detail. They feel like lived-in areas. Like, there's just so much to like about them.
Literally has waypoints every 5 fucking minutes. You always know where to go, even though the sandbox isn't even that big. You're gonna figure it out on your own easily. Another thing that annoyed me over time, and I know some people are just gonna say, oh, you could have turned it off in options, is the fact that every time you're near something you can interact with, the button prompt on screen shows. And I don't mean like press A to talk, that's fairly normal. I mean like every time you stand near one of these Void Co things, you gotta sing with Pauline, it says, oh, hold L down to sing every time. It's like, I know how to do this. I've done it 100 times already. And again, that completely brain-dead gameplay loop is the type of thing that truly would only...
Wow, he's really going to complain about Pauline opening doors. How
only be compelling to young children. But what are young children actually playing? They're playing Fortnite. A lot of them play Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty.
Oh,
and
yeah. So you don't interact with kids at all. Yeah, kids are totally not playing these games. Yeah, sure.
If they are playing age-appropriate games, it's more likely things like Minecraft or Roblox. The Switch 2 is definitely in the tier of luxury console at this point. Even if you can get it at MSRP, that's what, $500? I had to pay over $600 for mine. There's no fucking kids buying this shit and playing Donkey Kong. Why is Nintendo designing these games?
Gee. Oh, wow. It's almost like this game is going to sell for years and years as people get their consoles and pick up games for it. Like, what is this thing? Again, this is my big problem with the game journalists, is that they really think that, like, the PlayStation model of, like, releasing games and then just forgetting about them completely is, like, normal. When in reality, like, the way Nintendo does it is that, like, they release games and it's still relevant forever. You know, like people are still playing Mario Kart 8. People are still playing like Splatoon 3. You know, Metroid Dread. You know, there's just endless examples of just older games like finding audiences on Nintendo consoles all the time. Like this idea that like Bonanza isn't going to like be played by kids is laughably wrong.
Games exclusively for small children. Now, of course, there's always going to be the argument that this is not for you, which is a lie, given that, again, I love 3D platformers. I mean, for all 5 of you who watch the best part of my best and worst games of each year videos, there's a 3D platform in the top 5 every single year. My top 2 games of last year were Yellow Taxi Goes Vroom and
Oh, wow. Yeah, a bunch of indie games that no one's cared about or played. Wow.
indie 3D platformer and Astrobot. So yes, these games are...
Oh, he's an Astrobot shill. That explains everything. A 12-hour game that takes 100%. Oh, wow. Yeah, so he's calling Bonanza a baby game, but he's shilled for Astrobot. Yeah, what a complete...
For me, I love this genre, and yeah, I think DK Bonanza is incredibly mediocre, repetitive, and bland. I'm basically a baby game expert at this point. I played almost every major 3D platformer and plenty of decently obscure ones. Well, again, you know, the answer is obvious because games are not made for all ages anymore, for the most part. You could definitely argue something like Fortnite is for everyone. Now, me personally, I got sick of Battle Royales probably about 2 years after they got popular, and even then, I didn't play them that much. I probably only put 100 hours into Warzone at most, and barely touched PUBG or Fortnite. But I digress. The point of what I'm saying is, at a certain point, obviously, all of the huge corporations realize the main demographic for video games is 18 to 34, so the
Nope, wrong. Like, it's that mindset that's led to PlayStation, Xboxes, and to a lesser extent PCs, like, decline into irrelevancy. Like, that was the mindset that killed PlayStation and Xbox. And it's very important for people to understand this because Nintendo is the company that appeals to the widest possible demographic. You know, the narrative that like 18 to 34-year-old males are the primary, like it's fallen apart at the seams.
vast majority of games are rated M for mature. But there used to be a lot of effort put into these kid-friendly games. I mean, I still remember the mascot era pretty fondly. And there was a point in the early 2000s, at least with PlayStation, where it felt like their mascots were aging with their audience. I mean, with the PS1, we went from Spyro and Crash Bandicoot to then PS2, we had Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter. Basically going from kids to teens, right? Now it feels like these kids games either don't exist at all or are moving backward. And I'm not going to sit here and wank off Astrobot or anything because I do think the gameplay of that game is a bit lacking to say the least.
Wait, what? So he shilled Astrobot, and then like later in the video, he's like, "Well, the gameplay in it, like, isn't the gameplay the most important thing?" Wow, the Astrobot fan like shows his true form. Wow.
Compare Astrobot to DK Bonanza, at least Astro did have some engaging things going for it. There were a decent amount of gimmicks in that game that at least somewhat enhanced the very simplistic core gameplay loop. There's even cases where a series gets easier as it goes on, but still maintains enough challenge to feel fair and engaging, usually by adding more mechanics. A great example of this is Crash 1 to Crash 2. Crash 2 is much easier than Crash 1, but it's undoubtedly the better game by a mile. And the main reason that Crash 2 is easier is because they added sliding and a high jump you can do immediately afterward. That one move not only makes the platforming feel a lot more precise, but also opens up the opportunity for having a lot more creative level design. And speaking of level design, there is no goddamn level design in DK Bonanza. It's these mini sandboxes.
No level design in Bonanza. Completely and totally wrong. You have to navigate these areas. You have to complete your objectives. You have to beat a boss. There's no level design. Like, what does that even mean? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't...
Thank God they're not giant empty sandboxes for the most part, so slightly better than what I usually deal with when I review mediocre modern games. But even these mini sandboxes, they just feel so flat. There's like no verticality outside of you can dig.
He says that when he talks about the resort layer. You know, the one where you have to fly up and get on top of the watermelon. You know, like there are areas based off of cliffs. You know, like the feast layer has you like going up you know, the cheeseburger tower and stuff like that. Like, you know, no verticality. That's completely wrong.
Underground to find some secrets, but digging through the earth is not level design because you're creating the level, which is just...
Wow, you're creating the level. No, you idiot. You're engaging with the mechanics that the game devs gave you to use in the level. Like, what? That doesn't even make any sense. That's not part of the level. Like,
a straight line with no challenges and no enemies. Turning into a big monkey and just punching your way through the earth to get from point A to point B gets boring after 2 to 3 hours.
No, it doesn't. Can't confirm.
I just can't fucking stand this absolute onslaught of lazy-ass giant empty sandboxes in modern video games, man. I know people used to bitch all the time about, like, corridor shooters in the PS3 era, and don't get me wrong, those do suck. But I think in most cases, having a giant empty sandbox is just objectively worse than having a well-crafted level. I mean, if you imagine any...
Except... Bananza does feature well-crafted levels, and corridor shooters, by and large, were completely generic and uninspired. Far more so than this, you know? Like, that's just delusional. He's really gonna put up, like, I don't know, Resistance Fall of Man against this? Like, he's an idiot.
Level from Mario 64 and compare that to pretty much any level from Mario Odyssey, I guarantee you can picture that Super Mario 64 level almost perfectly in your memory, whereas the Odyssey one is just a blur. Why? Because Mario 64 has much tighter level design.
No, Mario 64 sticks out in your mind because you've played it so much over the years. Odyssey, you know, you played it as an adult and you haven't really gone back to it the same way.
Just that simple. And it's even worse than DK Bonanza, obviously, for the reasons I already said. I can remember the level themes, but despite just playing these levels, I don't remember anything specific because the platforming doesn't fucking matter. The bananas don't matter either. This is truly one of those games where you could probably just skip almost everything optional and just bum rush your way to the end. And the only challenge you might face is if you did.
But then you can't do all the post-game because you don't have the bananas to trigger the final challenges. Like...
Didn't upgrade health, because I think all of your other basic abilities could probably easily carry you through this game. The game has a hell of a lot of boss fights, and almost every single one is solved by just punching the thing. And I'm not even saying, like, you have to memorize the boss.
Wow. Yeah, you beat the boss by punching it. Yeah, you're completely neglecting the fact, like, they, it takes a while to get to their weak spots. They're all completely different, you know, that it takes skill to do, you know, like, oh, that'd be like if I said, like, oh, you beat the Mario boss by jumping on it. Yeah, that's your primary method of attack in that game.
Attack patterns and then punch. I mean, you run directly up to him and fucking punch him till he dies. But to get back on track here with the point of this video, my only question is, like, who are these games for? Because again, they're not for children. I don't think there's any parents who are buying their kids a Switch 2.
Yep.
At least probably not until Christmas, where it has some decent games, because I don't...
Wow, yeah, so kids will get the game at Christmas. Wow, which is only, what, like 5 months away? Dumbass.
Hear, like, any buzz about Donkey Kong Bonanza outside of course, critics giving it a score it doesn't deserve because they suck off every major corporation. I mean, again, Switch 2 sold out almost immediately by the man-baby Disney adult Nintendo audience. So parents are going to have to pay a premium to get this shit just for 2 games, one of which...
Wow, 2 games. Wow, it's almost like more games come out all the time or something.
Which being arguably the worst Mario Kart game in over 20 years. And while, yeah, I'll admit, if I...
He's quoting DSP. He's like... Wow, so like there is someone who agrees with DSP about that. Mario Kart World is the worst Mario Kart ever. No, it's not. You don't play Mario Kart. You don't know anything about Mario Kart. You're an idiot.
I had this game as a kid. I'd probably like it, but what does that matter? I mean, obviously kids have lower standards for games, but I'm happy that I grew up with a lot of games that game developers truly cared about making a good experience for people of all ages. Now, of course, I realize I'm talking to my audience who
what adult was playing like Jack and Daxter or Spyro? Like, again, like these guys don't have perspective. Like, they really don't. Like, they don't understand that that shit was made for kids,
Most
too.
of which probably wouldn't touch these games as a grown-ass man. Me, I have pretty broad taste. One day I can play Postal 2 and start gunning down civilians, pissing on them, burning them alive. And then an hour later I play Gex 3 and have a great time. I get it, this is more a video for me than it is for any of you guys, let's be real. But I can't help but lament, like, how Nintendo has slowly fallen over time. I know basically every game studio has fallen and billions must die. But there's something about Nintendo, I just feel like they've been slipping and slipping and slipping, and you just hope that they'll recover because you can see that at least some of their games still have a decent amount of soul, you know? I'm one of those people who really did like Breath of the Wild. I've said it a bunch of times.
Wow, he says that like that's some major controversial opinion. Like, oh, I really like Breath of the Wild, the best-selling Zelda game ever. Like, what an idiot.
And even Tears of the Kingdom, although it was basically just a copy-paste job with really shitty Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts style mechanics, it was still a decent game.
Wow. Okay, like I remember reacting to your Tears of the Kingdom review. Okay, I can tell you for a fact you did not say that back then. You shit all over that game. Like, again, there's a lot to say about this, but like, again, this is all just a cope. Right? This guy is going to shit on every major Nintendo game that comes out. He's not a fan of the company. He's a pleb who doesn't know anything about it. Like,
Probably should have just been like an expansion instead of a full experience, but I had fun playing it. Donkey Kong, I can't say I really had fun after like 3 hours in. It was just alright. But yeah, I guess originally I wanted to talk about a bunch of different baby.
so, okay. So he claimed that the game was too easy and that you could cheese the entire game by raising your health. But yeah, he
games.
he has quite a lot of health upgrades, and he has plenty of apple gels. So I guess he just maxed out the apple. So like, yeah, the game is so easy that he maxed out his healing items.
But let's be real, you know, this is definitely the worst example in a long time. Nintendo has clearly just stopped giving a fuck at this point. They know their shit is gonna sell anyway, at least to the Disney adult audience. And yes, some people are gonna say, well, you bought it. It's like, yeah, I'm a video game reviewer. I'm gonna make money off this video. And again, as I've implied in this video, none of you should buy a Switch 2 at all. It's not worth it on any level. I wish.
Yeah, they keep saying this, and yet nobody listens. I really wonder why. Don't buy a Switch 2, even though I'm playing it and having fun.
That it was. I don't want Nintendo to go to shit. And I can only hope that Metroid Prime 4 and Kirby Air Riders are good, because those are the only Switch 2 games I'm looking forward to.
Of course. Metroid Prime 4. Aw. The miraculous Metroid Prime 4 that's going to light the sales charts on fire, and is going to be the best games ever made, and it's going to save the Switch 2. What an idiot.
Fear this game is a sign of things to come. That even the few like family-friendly video games that come out anymore have to be dumbed down as much as humanly possible because our future generations are getting dumber and dumber for reasons I can't say on YouTube, or people say naughty words about me that I'm a bad person. But again, definitely not implying anything that I'm not allowed to say, of course. I just want games to be fun, man. But as it turns out, making a fun game is difficult even for some of the most legendary studios in the industry these days. So yeah, Nintendo, you've disappointed me yet again, even though my expectations were pretty low this time. At the end of the day, DK Bonanza is not a bad game, but it's completely mediocre and unremarkable, so there's no reason you should play it. That's about it. See you next time, guys.
Yeah, what a tool. Like, what a joker. Unbelievable. Yeah, awful video. No coherent point at all. Oh, wait, was my camera off? Yeah, no coherent point at all. Right, this guy was just sitting there, like, trying to gaslight you into thinking, Bonanza's too easy, and yet you can see, like, in his item usage, right, he has maxed out balloons, maxed out apple gels, put all of his skill points into health. It's almost like he was worried that he would get taken out on stream, you know, like, it's like, wow, unbelievable. Like, he's just, Again, I've played Bananza. It's not easy. Okay, you know, obviously it's not like the hardest game ever or anything, but like calling it easy, like a game for fetuses, is just so disingenuous. You can't really take it seriously. And yeah, this is like the general thing you always see with like these gaming YouTubers is like constant complaining about the Switch 2, saying you shouldn't buy it, that it only has 2 games, like none of which is true by the way, but it's like what did you like I really wonder like how long this is going to continue before like people get tired of it, because we're definitely in the early stages of it, you know, because I've been seeing a lot of backlash to like DSP's coverage of this game in particular. But like I do think that like Bonanza overwhelmingly is this like beloved game. You know, like every like major Nintendo YouTuber I can think of like loves the game. You know, I'm critical of it, but I still reasonably liked it. You know, like everybody I see who's like criticizing it are the kind of people who like just go after everything Nintendo does. You know, people like Sean Malmstrom, people like this. You know, people like I don't know, like Colin Moriarty. Like there are a lot of people like that I'm sure have like a vested interest in seeing Bonanza fail. Clear Expedition 33 fans. Like, there's a lot of people who want to see Bonanza fail, but like the reality is it didn't, and this is going to be like a wildly popular game on Switch 2. It already is, and yet like we're still in this like weird phase where like everybody wants to deny the obvious. You know, everybody wants to like do this thing where they just pretend the game is a disaster, and it just isn't true at all. So yeah, with that being said, yeah, terrible video. Synthetic Man is a joke. He's a cuckold who jacks it to Futanari, Gerudo porn. This guy is a loser who lives with his mom. He is like the complete like stereotype of a chud. You know, he is a complete failure of a human being and should be regarded as such by the gaming community.